In 1981, I attended Cape Renee Bible School in England, where I was surrounded by sheep. Hilary Price, wife of Pastor Charles Price of the People's Church in Toronto, grew up nearby and brought me this picture from home. Thanks, Hilary. She just knew that this would warm my heart, and I'm just a little bit excited to be talking to a former shepherdess today. Patricia Booher has also been a teacher and consumer educator at the University of Wyoming. She's done extensive research and work with family resiliency throughout the life cycle. Think about that. Family resiliency throughout the life cycle. Well, I see that resiliency reflected in the chapters of Patricia's book, Reflections of a Wyoming Shepherd on the 23rd Psalm. I have both hardcover and soft cover, Patricia. This is a labor of love and the fruit of a life journey. Now, you're not a shepherdess anymore.
Well, I have children all around me. At church, they all call me, even 50-year-old men call me grandma. What does that mean? But anyway, I'm grandma, and that's good.
I want folks to see, now this is actually a photograph we're going to see here that's on the cover of your book, but tell us why this landscape warms your heart.
Well, I grew up on a homestead in Wyoming, which is such a gift because my father came home from the war. I'm so glad he got to come home from World War II. My parents went to Wyoming and just cleared virgin soil. So
they're pioneers.
Yes, they were present-day pioneers, and I learned so much from them about life and just being tenacious and working hard. So when I went back to the university, I lived near Shell, Wyoming, which is in Shell, right at the base of the Bighorn Mountains. So the view from my deck was incredible. And my friends, my Cale and Linda Reed, are such dear friends. So last summer, he went up in the mountains for a whole day. When I saw this picture up on the top of the mountains with the sheep, I knew it had to be the cover. And everywhere I go, people are so taken with it. No, it's so beautiful there.
And how did you come to be a shepherdess? Someone who looked after specifically orphan sheep. Am I right?
Well, I talk about it in the book. Early on, after we'd only been there 2 or 3 years, a man who had many bands of sheep, and there will always be some who are, we call them bum lambs, but maybe the mother can't take care of them, she dies, or for some reason they're orphan lambs. So he would stop by the house and ask my mother if she would like, because they had so many, they had thousands of sheep. So that's how it started. And so I was just a little girl. I would have 30 bum lambs, baby lambs. Get up very early in the morning. I mean, they're babies. And if I would have known.
They're so cute when they're brand new.
I loved them.
They just seem to bounce on their little feet.
Oh, I loved
almost
the lambs. And, you know, they have personalities. And it's interesting that the Lord he describes us as sheep. And the more you're around sheep, you understand why.
This is me.
This is us, you know. But and sometimes I look back, if I would have had any idea I was going to write a book, I would have paid closer attention. I would have taken notes. But I remember, you know, they would come many times, they would be sick, they would have scours, and they were so close to death sometimes. And I just remember as a little girl, I would take those, and of course they were messy and, you know, they were sick. And I would just take them up in my arms, and I would just hold them and pray for them and hold them. Sometimes they were too weak to eat, and I would feed them, and I loved these lambs. And when one would die, I would cry. And I would just have experiences. My father was a gentleman. And he's with the Lord. He died in '86, but he understood my gentle heart. Because sometimes when I'd be out in the pasture, we'd have a stubborn ewe that would take off and get through the fence and eat the wet alfalfa. And then in a little while, they're dying. And I would just cry, and I couldn't save them. And I think that's gone with me all my life. And I think I've always been so blessed because from the time I can't remember, as long as I remember, I just loved God. And when I accepted Him, He became so personal. So everything in my life, I knew it was connected to the Lord.
It was interesting to read. I think your mom came to know the Lord personally through the death of her husband, your father. Am I right?
Well, actually, it was her father.
Oh, her dad.
She had accepted the Lord when she was 18. But when I was in the 5th grade, when her father died, she had this encounter with God where she just took on a new level of dedication. And that's when I accepted Christ personally.
She influenced you then. You saw the change in her.
And my grandmother. My grandmother influenced me. She was a godly woman. And I always loved him passionately.
Now, you say you were baptized at 9, but you were still searching.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
I got baptized, you know, but I hadn't accepted the Lord personally, so it's that personal. Mm-hmm. And when I wrote the book last year, I just went to, I was at real estate at the time. I went to my broker, and I don't think he understood. I said, I have to just put my license, I just have to stop everything in my life. And when I began to write the book, my family were wonderful. They all just protected me and gave me that quiet place. But I would just write so into the night, and I would describe myself, I was in the raw. I mean, I physically suffered as I wrote it. It was so intense inside of me, writing about this shepherd, and I would just weep and cry, and then I would be full of joy. And this went on, and I just couldn't believe it when it was finished. So what a journey. I'm so excited, though.
Well, one of the most dramatic chapters in the journey connects you to the shepherd in a place I'm sure you would never have chosen, on a snowy night in February 2001. Tell us what happened.
I traveled all the time for the university, all over. But for this particular reason, the days before that, I was just anxious. I didn't want to go. And it was a Sunday. I didn't like to travel on Sunday. And so my mother used to say there was Shirley Basin. It was out in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming. You never want to get caught in a snowstorm in Shirley Basin, and she was right. I didn't realize I was driving into this terrible storm, and I was so anxious. And that morning, I've never done that before, I turned around and I said, goodbye, little home. And I would just had this incredible day with God. I was just worshiping, praying, and he was just like riding in the car with me. And I drove into this storm, and I hit a patch of ice, and it's like, it was like someone shoved my car from the back. I had no control. So it's circling all around the road, and it was this brutal wind, and it was 20 below, at least 20 below zero. And here came a snowplow out of nowhere. I don't remember hitting him, but then he hit me again from the back, and then he hit me from the side. The car was just totally mangled, and it was all around me, and my seat was broken, and I was just sitting here. All the windows are out. And it took an hour for them to come with the ambulance. And I just remember I was so cold, and I looked down and my stomach was swelling up, and I thought I'm going to die.
You thought you'd freeze to death, never mind injuries.
Well, I didn't know how, and I was just so surprised that I was, and then when my father died, the last thing he said to me is, I will never give up hope. And the night before, Robert Schuller, I was listening to him, and he said, he quoted that scripture, and I said, oh, I am not going to die. I am not dying today, because I had another book I was finishing, and I was just going into a year sabbatical. And I just told myself I couldn't cry. You wanted to cry because it was a terrible situation. You were so cold. And I remember I was so cold and I was hurting. But the Lord was with me. And my Father's in heaven, but it was like he was talking to me. And then my son, who I so cherish, his face, I saw his face was so sad. And he thought, I'm not leaving my family. Mm-hmm. And it was such a sense of destiny. And of course, I was in terrible shape, you know. I mean, I was bruised all over just for months. I couldn't work.
Well, that accident would change your life in many ways.
But I was never sad. I was never sad. And I just said one time, a couple days after, I said, Lord, I was going to witness to my friends, so I'm not understanding why I had the wreck. And the Lord said, you know what? It's your spirit down inside of you. This earthly body will pass away. Don't you worry about it. I'll take care of you. I said, okay. So and I didn't even want to tell people how happy I was. I was home, and of course, totally quiet, couldn't hardly walk, and you know, I was in pain. But I was just happy, praying and holding my dog, and I just had this incredible sense of destiny. And I love to hear stories about people who's come to so close to death. I mean, either they just kind of keep on, you know, in a norm, or they have this sense of destiny that they're here for a purpose. And when I wrote the book, yes, this sense of destiny to wounded people who are in desperate situations, and God is there.
Seems to be a theme here today. I couldn't resist bringing this sketch. I think Johnny might even be embarrassed to see it now. This is over 30 years old. I had been a follower of Christ just months when I heard Johnny Erickson speak. She talked about being on that striker frame, wanting to die, facing a future as a quadriplegic at just 19, and sensing the Good Shepherd, Jesus, touching her cheek. And this shepherd is actually touching the lamb's face. I had to purchase this sketch. I mean, her art now is like light years ahead of this artistically. But in the moment that she shared that very personal experience of the Lord's love and presence, I did too. And it was a turning point in my brand new life with Christ. I think I've read, it is the Lord's presence in that freezing snowstorm with your body broken, tremendous injuries, that made that precious. And had a whole campus talking about it for, well, what did they say about angels?